Coming up next, Mónica del Arenal. I cannot read all of the resume because it is very impressive and I'm about to lose these notes. An architect with a master's degree from UPC in Barcelona, an advanced diploma from University College London, a graduate of the program in higher direction of museums led by the Getty Leadership Institute, and she has been a director of the Albertina Cultural Project since 2007. That is a consulting firm that focuses on heritage and territory research. From 2016 to 18, she was the Culture and Education Counselor for the Mexican Foreign Service, which, as the director of the Mexican Cultural Institute here in San Antonio, she developed some 65 different cultural activities in collaboration with about 30 institutions and government entities. And I can't read all of this, it's just too much. But she is also winner of a number of prizes, including the annual prize of the Benemerita Sociedad de, I can't even read the, it's in italics, Geografía y Estadística y los Special Prize of the Triple XMX Building Awards. Give it up for Mónica del Arenal, Cultural and Arts Consultant.
Should I use this?
Do you want me to hold it up?
Thank you. So, 2013, Mexico City, program in higher direction of museums. I asked the participants what would be the most important problem for Mexico, for culture in Mexico. One of the participants said that complacency and the lack of rigor were, without a doubt, two recurrent mistakes that makes us forget the true meaning and value of Mexican culture. On the other hand, the answer of the Director Emeritus of the Getty Leadership Institute was, Mexico is one of the countries with the greatest cultural richness in the world. However, its problem doesn't lie in the lack of economic resources, as is often thought, but with a deep inferiority complex. These two assessments of how Mexican culture is presented to the world, categorical and opposed to each other, have guided my professional life during the last years. What then is cultural diplomacy about? According to Diaz Morales, culture is the cult and cultivation of life. Regarding the relations between Mexico and the US, my approach as a professional is how culture serves as a tool of knowledge and communication between two countries in a difficult political climate. Above all, I consider relevance as the most important aspect to address. In the exhibition The Flight at Its Seat, Betsabe Romero quotes Octavio Paz, "The invention of corn by Mexicans is only comparable with man's invention of fire." This leads me to reflect on the extensive scientific work on the genetic diversity of corn in Mexico. This is a work in process that is worthy of communicating through gastronomy and the work of ethnoecology at the Musée de l'Homme in Paris, France, a collaboration between the educational department of the museum and Renata Leal, a Mexican researcher who states, unused agrobiodiversity and its traditional knowledge is agrobiodiversity that disappears. So culture could be useful as well. And in this case, a collaborative culinary event, Ven a Comer, Come and Eat, was the perfect excuse to showcase the Mexican cookbook collection from the UTSA library. In the endeavor to communicate and make interdisciplinary connections, culture fosters cross-country collaboration and critical thinking. The discussion on monarch butterfly migration through Mexico, the US, and Canada is presented with a number of approaches at the Monarch Butterfly Festival in San Antonio since 2016. Culture is celebration too. 5 out 720 monarch butterflies, tagged and released mainly by children last year at the Pearl in San Antonio, were recovered in Mexico, a citizen science organization announced at the end of April. One more focus is related to authenticity. Traditions are the display of Mexican identity. Do we want to preserve authentic traditions? Knowledge and accurate information is the first step for understanding the real meaning of celebrations and commemorations, and to present a contemporary Mexico firmly rooted in those traditions. For Mexicans, to say, mi casa es tu casa, my house is your house, means to generously welcome others into our world and family. Culture is beyond visiting a museum. Exploring the potential of public space for a ludic city where people engage and meet. In Sense of Place in Los Angeles, Jose Davila uses wide open spaces as the principle of interaction with art. Mexican culture has the challenge of going further than Mexican masters of muralism. Exploring the potential of new talents of contemporary art is a must in cultural management of the 21st century. Taking risks. In Is Not Wagner Anymore, Gonzalo Lebrija updates composers' classics with all-women mariachi band in Dallas. Isn't it a crazy idea? The performance addresses anti-Semitism and racist ideology, very common in these days. In Show Us Your Shoes, Two Parallel Stories, Rocio Sáenz revisited the shooting during the Battle of the Flowers parade in 1979. Probably it's the time for revisiting all beliefs and thinking the Alamo differently. And now 2 ideas about the mutual fascinations between Mexico and the United States. Emilio Ambas was the Argentinian-born American architect who unveiled Luis Barragan's architecture at the MoMA of New York in 1976. One of the few buildings built by Ambas in his career is the Lusail Wholesale Conservatory at San Antonio Botanical Garden. Would it be relevant to make an exhibition of these 2 significant architects for San Antonio and Mexico? Regarding textile art, this huipil is dyed by grana cochinilla, a beautiful red pigment produced by the insect Dactylopius coccus, a parasite of the opuntia, best known as nopal. Good news is the fact that you can find naturally this pigment on the nopales of San Antonio. Wouldn't it be interesting to explore more applications of this resource with local artists and artisans? What about a bicultural project? Art is culture by excellence, and music is the universal language. I chose this image to explain how complex is the reality. Anyways, the cult and cultivation of life is presented through the beauty and the truth in the middle of chaos and despair. And last but not least, cultural diplomacy should be inclusive in the deepest sense of the word. Cultural diplomacy is how culture can maintain a permanent dialogue among people around the world.
Thank you, Monica. Okay, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
All right, first of all, before we get into maybe what you mentioned there in a difficult political time or climate, where are you from? Where's your hometown, and how did you wind up in San Antonio?
I was born in Pachuca, and I spent
Which is naturally come right to San Antonio.
My father was anti-Yankee, actually, so I never visited.
I'm sorry, your family was?
My,
I've got the wind in my ear, too.
we didn't have the American dream,
Ah, okay.
basically.
But now, so you went to Barcelona, and then
Yes,
you bounced around.
I was educated in Europe.
Okay, and then you wound up here in San Antonio.
I was appointed by the Mexican
Right.
government
Okay.
to
But
run
what-
the Mexican Cultural
And
Institute.
that was in 2016?
2016.
Was that before the election or during the...
Before the election.
Okay, because that brings me to the next set of questions here. How important do you think is culture now in connecting two countries with this political climate, and how different is it for you even in your job?
I think is the best opportunity. Culture is the best link we could have now with the U.S. and especially Texas. You know, Coahuila, Texas used to be the same territory in the past. So we shared a lot of traditions, and even now, 60% of the population in San Antonio is Latin American.
And now, with the different political climate, is it tougher in some ways for some people here, maybe not yourself, but for some others here? And how do you see that as being from someone from
I think
PechaKucha?
most of the people is expecting more from Mexicans to give something to this country, to share more of our culture with you. I think San Antonio is super welcoming city, and you love Mexico. So I think this is the best time to share our culture
What a
with you.
politician. And also then moving on from here, what other I'm sorry, I didn't mean that in a mean way. You're just so positive.
Yes.
What other projects are you working on that we might be able to see?
Yes, I have the opportunity to stay here because I resigned 2 months ago to the Mexican government. So I fell in love with San Antonio since I arrived. So I appreciate the opportunity to stay here as an arts and culture consultant and working for the city of San Antonio.
Give it up for Mónica del Arenal. Thank you very much. Thank you.